families, creating a lifetime of memories. Sadly, some families are denied these important moments due to the sad practice of alienation. These are families divided.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Families Divided TV. In this episode, Lisa Rothfus is going to be speaking to us on court-ordered reunification, a how-to guide. This is going to be really important. It's not easy to get a judge to order therapy for you and your alienated child, but if you're fortunate enough to have this opportunity, you don't want to waste it. This presentation is going to describe why you want to ask the court to order a special kind of treatment called reunification therapy. It's also going to discuss what you need to know before going to court on how to choose a qualified reunification therapist and what a good therapeutic reunification process should look like between you and your child. We're going to discuss the differences in treating mild, moderate to severe alienation cases and address the question on how long you should stay in regular reunification therapy before asking the court for a more intense level of treatment. Finally, Lisa's going to look at how you treat severe alienation cases. This is a very important episode for those of you that are seeking reunification therapy. We're going to be right back with Lisa right after these important messages. Hello, everyone. I'm Elaine Cobb. I'm founder and president of Family Access Fighting for Children's Rights. I'm also founder, host, and executive producer of Families Divided TV. I want to invite you to our upcoming fall conference, which is virtual and international. It will be the very last one that we ever have, and it's going to be an incredible 2-day event, and I hope you'll join us. Normally we do the topics, it's just one topic specifically. But this time, I said, you know what, we need to branch it out a little bit. And so I asked you to send in what you thought were very important topics to you. And so that's what we're going to be using and speaking on. We have two keynote speakers. Our first one is Dr. Edward Crook, and he, as a favor to us, we had asked him if he could do a study on grandparents who have never met their grandchildren. And there's never been a study on this. It's always in court or in the legislature if you've had some kind of a relationship with your grandchild. Well, hello, there's many of us out there who have never seen their grandchild, including myself and my husband Chester, who we've never seen our granddaughter Dare, who's now 13. So this is an incredible, extensive study that he's taken over a year to do, and we've recorded it now. And this presentation, I will tell you, is off the chart. It is incredible. It's awesome. I mean, I could just keep going on and on. He's going to give us much information, and he's also going to get this peer reviewed, get it ready to be got out there with lots of different places, and it's going to help. We'll be able to use this in court. We'll be able to use this in the legislature, and it is huge, very, very important. So I hope even those grandparents who have met their grandchildren will he's also going to talk to you as well. So you're not going to be left out. So if you are a grandparent, you do not, I repeat, do not want to miss this conference, because this is really, really great. So please, be there. His presentation is entitled "The Eraser of Grandparents from Children's Lives." We're going to also have Bill Eddy as our other co-host and our keynote speaker. And he's going to be speaking to us on court trends, the trouble with letting the children decide. Some states and court systems are considering letting children as young as 14 years old have the right to make decisions about whether to have a relationship with one of their parents. He's going to be speaking to us about this. And, Bill Eddy's with High Conflict Institute. He's written numerous books. He's got a new one out now, as you know. And you're not going to want to miss this one. This is a really good one. It's important that we know about all that. We're also going to have Dr. Joshua Coleman, who works with alienated and estranged uh, parents of adult children. And he's very well known out there all over the world. And he's going to be speaking to us about reaching out to your alienated or estranged child, the do's and don'ts that you need to be doing. I get emails all the time from you guys wanting to know what should I do. Even on our Families Divided comments, I get all that. He's going to let us know right here. So you want to be able to be there for that too. Dr. Sue Kornbluth will be presenting as well in this conference, and she's going to be speaking to us on managing personality disordered co-parents who alienate their children. Now, we haven't done a whole lot on co-parenting. We may have 3, I think, episodes on Families Divided. So this will be huge for those of you that have to co-parent and you're dealing with people who have major personality disorders. So Dr. Kornbluth is going to share much with this on that. And Dr. Mary Alvarez is going to be speaking to us on a very interesting topic. It's going to be called parental alienation, the toxic stress in your child's brain. And nothing is more important than our child and what they're going through this. They are what matters through all of this in the world of alienation. As we know, alienation is child abuse. And she's going to share some very interesting things. She's done a great study on this, so you're not going to want to miss that. Chris Turner is going to be speaking to us on trusting and understanding agents of court guardian ad litem, amicus therapists, psychologists, parenting facilitators, and court-appointed professionals. She's going to tell you, give us some information because it can get really overwhelming to us as we have to deal with these people. She's going to give us some great advice on that as well. And then Dr. Kelly Baker is going to be speaking to us on the therapeutic interventions for parent-child contact problems with teens. We've never, and I'm sad to say that, we've never done anything with teens. So this one's going to be huge. And Dr. Baker's really doing an intense study on it, and it is going to be good, but it's really going to help you as an alienated or targeted parent and how to deal with this with your teenager. We also have Melanie Gill with us, and she's going to be speaking on Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. We deal with a lot of this in court with lots of things that are said that are not true. And, Melanie's really been through the mill over there, so to speak, in the UK. And she's going to be helping us in sorting out this important info. Also, Dr. Kathleen Ray from Canada will be speaking to us on understanding the realities of a reunification program, dispelling common misconceptions. There's a lot of lies and fake news out there on this, and she's going to share and help us to understand what is factual and what is false. And so you don't want to miss this one either. Then attorney Chris Turner will be with us. He's going to be sharing secrets to litigating parental alienation allegations. Chris is one of the best attorneys, and I've dealt with many over the 13 years, and he truly is like at the top for me. He really cares about you guys, and first and foremost, he cares about you. And he's, a lot of attorneys, I've got to say, sadly, are out for the bucks, but Chris isn't one of them. And he's going to be sharing a lot with us on this, so please don't miss out on it. Also, Randy Fine is going to be speaking to us about confronting the mirror. Do narcissists face their own reflections? That is a very interesting question, and Randy will be sharing with us on that. Also, we have with us Dean Tom. He has a really great presentation on false allegations of abuse, navigating the 3-ring circus, and he's really knowledgeable on all of this and dealing with CPS and all of them. So he'll share much info for you and how to deal with all of that. And then to me, this is really the most important part of the conference, I think. Caden's Law has pretty much destroyed or tried to destroy our families. Well, we're going to have with us Dr. Lynn Steinberg, Yakov Achenbaum, and Robert Gaza with us. And those three are going to be doing a panel discussion. And they all three have all different perspectives on all about Caden's Law and what to do and how we can go around it and how we can defeat it and help get our families back together in ways that we can. Many of you in states really need to be paying attention to this. I'm going to tell you that as a parent and as a grandparent, if we don't stand up and fight for our children and our grandchildren, we can just about wrap it up and forget about it. So you can't sit back and say, oh, I wish they'd come help us over here and all that. Get up and get it done. Help everybody. You don't have to be, a college degree or any of that. You've just got to have the heart and the zeal that you want to get up and fight for your own kid and your own grandkid. So be a part, make it happen, and come and learn from this. You can submit your questions, and we're going to have questions for all different presentations and especially for this. So we want you to do that. So don't miss out on that, please. That's going to be really important. I also want to emphasize that this will only be, again, through only the Zoom, Family Access Zoom. That will be the only way you can be a part of this 2-day event. But I also want you to know, and this is very important, if you cannot make the 2-day event, that's fine. We'd love for you to be there in person, but we understand everybody's lives are busy. So take the time and register, and you have between that following Monday, the 7th of October, till the end of December to view it. We'll have that for you available. And here's the secret. If you do register and you do come to the event, you can watch it as many times as you want. So that's going to be a special that I'm giving my gift to you that way, because this will be our absolute last conference that we ever have. So you will have plenty of time to view it as many times as you want. And I hope you will take advantage of it and do just that, because we feel like these topics are so very important. And we want you to be a part of it. We're also on Sunday night, we're going to be having, after the conference, we're going to have from 7 to 9, a time where you can meet together and share your testimonies. If you want to share your stories and stuff, that's fine. And we're also going to be making a support group out of that as well. So come for that. And then on Saturday night from 9 p.m. until 7 a.m. Sunday morning, we're going to be having what we call the one-on-one chat room, which I lovingly call the Chatty Cathy group. These people have a great time at these. We've done these every international virtual conference. They get together, and I do not understand how in the world they can chat half the night online and get back in the morning for the conference, but they're doing it. But it's a great time to really open your heart, share your experiences, give each other ideas on what's important to you. We do everything we can to make this the best it can be for you and being supportive to you. I really hope that you will come and you will join us for this very important, incredible event. And also, I will be announcing to you something very special at the end of our conference. So please come, please register. You've still got time, and look forward to seeing you there. Take care. God bless.
Divorce and co-parenting are a major life interruption for families, especially the kids, but also for parents and grandparents. And it's even worse in blame-filled, high-conflict cases. When parents engage in alienation by turning the kids against the other parent or grandparents, kids suffer. They're denied the opportunity to build the 4 big skills necessary for future resilience. New Ways for Families online class can help. parents learn to use our popular biff and ear skills to calm the conflict and stop the hostile emails and texts. And we even have a class for kids and parents to learn together. Research shows a 75% improvement in joint parental decision-making after this course is taken, plus overall improvements for kids' well-being. Don't wait to make this affordable investment in your children's future and improve your well-being too. Start learning new ways for your family today at conflictplaybook.com.
Are you a divorced parent starting to lose your relationship with your child? Is your child resisting coming to your home? Or maybe they won't come at all anymore. Are they developing a rude and disrespectful attitude and refusing to follow your rules when they're at your house? Is your ex's house the place that they really want to be? Well, this series is going to educate you on how you can save your relationship with your child through reunification therapy. Welcome, and my name is Lisa Rothfus, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Austin, Texas, with almost 40 years of experience counseling children and families. I specialize in reunification therapy and treating parent-child contact problems. And I've worked for 10 years in the Texas family court system with high conflict families as a guardian ad litem, a court-appointed therapist, a co-parent counselor, and a trained mediator. So there are two important questions that parents often ask me in my practice. The first question is it possible to save the relationship if your child is starting to reject you and reconnect with that child? And second, is there a process or treatment for helping a parent find their way back to a healthy relationship with their child? So my overall message today that I hope I can convey to you is that it is absolutely possible to reunite with your child no matter what level of obstacles you have experienced. There is a specialized therapeutic approach for treating these kinds of situations. But there are certain things that need to happen to make it successful. Let's start with the definition of a few key terms that we could use to refer to throughout these videos. And the first is target parent. So what is a target parent? Well, it's a parent who's losing the relationship with the child. This is the one we are targeting for reunification, the parent that needs the help. And then we have the favored parent. This parent is the one who is currently favored by the child. But this parent is the one who's obstructing the relationship between the child and the target parent, knowingly or unknowingly. And we're going to be talking about something called resist-refuse dynamics. This is where a child is resisting or refusing to go to a target parent's home. And I'm not going to be using too much psychological jargon in this video, but I do want to talk about a term called parent-child contact problems, which you do find in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So I want to tell you a story about Tom and his little girl, Emma, who's 10 years old, who stopped coming to his home. He divorced his wife 2 years ago and had a 50-50 custody schedule. And recently, when he went to get Emma for his parenting time, she would start screaming and flailing her body around and refusing to get in his car. Tom was very frightened by her response, and he didn't want to push her or cause her so much distress. But slowly over time, Mom began to refuse to even bring Emma to exchanges because she didn't want to get her so upset. And his ex also stopped giving him any information about Emma, even when he would text or email. And the ex said, "He's stalking me. He's dangerous," whenever she tried to contact the mom. And these ex's fears were also being conveyed to Emma. Well, Emma was supposed to stay with Tom on the weekends when his ex catered parties. But his ex began to collude and leave Emma with her parents on the weekends. They tried to keep the child away from Tom, saying he upset her too much. He must be dangerous. Tom wanted desperately to see his daughter, and he didn't know what to do. Tom didn't know what resist-refuse dynamics were. He didn't know what parent-child contact problems were either. And he was completely unaware that it was happening to him and that he had become the target parent. He did not know there was a specific type of treatment for this problem called reunification therapy. So we discussed together, how could he go about getting this kind of therapy? Okay, so let's talk about our goals with this video. I want to help you understand that reunification therapy is a different kind of therapy and treatment for parent-child contact problems. I want to provide you with a roadmap of steps needed for setting up a successful reunification process, no matter what kind of rejection you're experiencing from your child. I want to help you avoid some of the common pitfalls I often see when these processes are being set up. But the most important goal is to help you reunify with your child. Let's start with, what is reunification therapy? Well, it's a specific kind of therapeutic approach used when you're treating resist-refuse dynamics between a child and a parent. Reunification therapy wasn't developed as a treatment approach until around 2000, and it was pioneered by someone by the name of Richard Gardner. So this is a very new form of treatment that's showing a great deal of success and promise. And it's a new process, and there's new research studies that are being done to inform us around this kind of treatment. There are numerous academics, psychologists, and experts in this field, and it's continuing to grow. In fact, in my practice, my clients are having tremendous life-changing successes through this form of treatment, which is why I want to share it with you. And I've personally seen the joy on the faces of all the children and the grandparents and the parents that I work with day in and day out as their relationship is reestablished and it starts to grow. But there are challenges. Reunification therapy is not fully codified or uniform in the family law system. So it's largely left up to individual family courts to determine reunification protocols. Many lawyers and judges don't even know what it is, but more and more each day are learning about the success of reunification therapy. And many more courts are learning about what is needed for a successful reunification therapy process. So how is reunification therapy different from family therapy? Well, in family therapy, a relatively intact family comes together to do therapy and talk about their issues. But in high conflict divorce cases, this kind of a structure isn't really possible because you really need a different kind of therapeutic model for treating these cases. Often, these parents have so much conflict, they can't even be in the same building together, much less the same office. These parents are not getting along, and the child starts to resist seeing one of the parents. Also, it is focused and structured intervention that requires all family members interacting with the child to participate, but not necessarily, like I said, in the same room. And it does not see the child as the identified problem. It sees the parent's behavior as the main issue to be addressed. So, the goals of reunification therapy. Well, the first one is to assist a child in overcoming visitation refusal. Why do children resist? Well, children cannot manage the emotional internal distress of being in the middle of this war between their two parents. I call that often being the casualty of the war, which children can really relate to because that's exactly how they feel. We talk about how they're caught in a loyalty bind between their two parents, who they have lot of love for. But to reduce the internal psychological stress they're experiencing, they feel they have to choose one parent over another. So basically, resisting is a form of self-preservation. The second goal of reunification therapy is to address any fears and phobias the child is experiencing in reconciling with the target parent. The third is to work on clarifying the narratives the child might be harboring about the target parent. And fourth, we want to reframe situations the child might have experienced that led to the disconnection between the child and the parent. We want to monitor ongoing communication and behavioral patterns between the target parent and the child as they reunite, assisting them in building back as many positive interactions as we possibly can. And with the favored parent, we want to monitor their anxiety about the reunification process and any issues of obstruction from that parent, which we call gatekeeping. But above all, the safety and well-being of the child are always the priority. So we're just getting started, and there's a lot we're going to cover. But know that if you are losing your relationship with your child, you need to do something. And reunification therapy is a great form of treatment that you should consider. The difficulties that you're experiencing, they're being experienced by many, many other parents just like you. And the science of reunification therapy has advanced dramatically and has shown incredible outcomes for people just like you. So in the next segment, I'll be showing you how to use reunification therapy to help you to repair the relationship with your child. I'll outline 3 major steps you need to take, providing instructions and tips about how to be successful. In the last segment, we talked about what reunification therapy is, its goals, and we followed the story of Tom and the little girl Emma on their path leading to reunification therapy. But next, we're going to cover the steps involved in having a successful reunification therapy process. Now I'm going to talk about 3 important steps for having a successful reunification therapy process. And it's really important to understand that these steps may occur in a different order than I'm describing them here. And that's okay. You just need to make sure that all 3 of them do happen. So first, find a lawyer who is familiar with resist-refuse dynamics and parent-child contact problems and its treatment. It's relatively new form of treatment, so they may be completely unaware of it and how successful it can be. Personally, I've seen a number of clients who have tried to find lawyers and they didn't know anything about reunification therapy. They didn't even recommend reunification therapy as a possible way to reunite the parent and the child. Second, you need to get a really good court order. And this is a difficult process that unfortunately the court has to be involved in. People will often say, but I don't want to go to court. I don't want to have to pay that money and go to court. And I will tell them a good court order is necessary if you're going to have a successful reunification therapy process. And third, you need to find a therapist experienced in reunification therapy. This is absolutely the most crucial step in the reunification therapy process. And I'll be covering that in more depth later. But often this step occurs, again, simultaneously with the first step. So you're finding a lawyer. At the same time, you may be finding a really good reunification therapist. So let's go in depth on these 3 steps, starting with, first, get a good lawyer. The most important thing when choosing a lawyer for a target parent is to find one that understands resist-refuse and parent-child contact problems. Sometimes, by the way, this problem is referred to as alienation or parental alienation, but we're going to be using the term resist, refuse, and parent-child contact problems. So how do I find the right lawyer? Well, here are a few questions that you should ask right up front. Have they worked on other cases where the child was refusing to go to the parent's home? Do they know the term resist, refuse, or parent-child contact problems? What solutions did they offer the court to handle this problem in the past with other clients? Have they worked with the court to order reunification therapy before? Have they worked with, or do they know therapists who work with clients in reunification therapy? I know that sounded pretty easy, but you usually have to interview more than one lawyer to find the right one. I have clients that will interview 3 or 4 different lawyers, and you really need to find a person that understands what you're going through and can help you navigate the court system and put together a strategy for managing a case involving reunification therapy. So let's move on to the second important step for a successful reunification therapy process. Second, you need to get a good court order. So, does reunification therapy require a court order? And I always tell my clients, absolutely yes. The court order is always needed. But why do you have to get a court order? Well, you have to remember that the favored parent usually doesn't really want counseling to address any of these issues. They pretty much have a child who's enjoying being in their home, so this is not an issue for them. And you're going to need a court order to require them to be part of the process and to motivate them to help the child participate in the process. In my experience, reunification therapy will simply not work without a good court order. I've had clients that have tried to do this on a voluntary basis, and it always falls apart. But let me talk about what getting a good court order entails. So there's 6 keys to constructing a good reunification therapy order. And the first is be sure to specify the type of therapy you're wanting. And it needs to say family reunification therapy, not family therapy. As we talked about in a previous segment, they are very different. You need to have the name of a reunification therapist on the actual court order. Usually, everybody will come to court with 2 or 3 names that they're going to consider for being the reunification therapist. But you need to choose one. And the reason for that is because you do not want the favored parent to do what we call therapist shopping, which is pretty much where they don't like what's happening with one therapist. Maybe they're actually having to look at and deal with some of their own behaviors. So they will say they don't want to work with that therapist anymore, and they'll go try to find another therapist. If you have a court order that has the therapist's name on it, they are not able to do this, even if they say that they want to. So who's going to participate? Well, it's very important that your order says all family members are required to participate in treatment. That includes anybody living with a child, a step-parent, a grandparent, step-siblings, anybody that is living with the child, because all of those people could be influencing the family dynamic and situation. So the 4th key to constructing a good reunification order is to be sure that the parties need to contact the reunification therapist by a certain date. The reason for this is that the favored parent will put off contacting the reunification therapist as long as they can. And if there is not an exact date, then this will delay the entire process. And I've seen this happen. It has delayed the process sometimes for months. The 5th key is define how reunification will be paid for. Again, this oftentimes doesn't end up in the order, and this is a huge problem. because we don't know who's going to pay, and then they start fighting about the fee. And again, the whole process can be delayed for months. And finally, the order should allow the reunification therapist to coordinate the case with all mental health professionals, because sometimes there are a lot of professionals that are working on a case. And so let me get more into this one and why it's important. So why have the reunification therapist coordinate a case? Well, all parties need to deal with one therapist because too many therapists lead to what is termed fractionalization, which is the breakdown in the communication between all of the therapists and the professionals. Splitting among therapists is a real problem in these cases. The reunification therapist and the individual therapist are not in agreement. The child may receive conflicting messages. Fractionalization among therapists recreates the pathology that the child is already experiencing in the family over reuniting with the target parent. The favored parent is very good at propagating their false narratives about the target parent to the individual therapist. And very few individual therapists are trained to understand this dynamic. So here is a big pitfall with an order, and one of my really big pet peeves. And that is, you want to try to avoid having children in individual therapy. Sometimes there's 2, 3 children in a case. Everybody has a different individual therapist. Parents have different individual therapists. But the best form of treatment for resist-refuse cases is family reunification therapy, not individual therapy. Individual therapy with children can really backfire in reunification therapy because oftentimes they go into this therapist and they talk about all the bad things about the target parent, and they never address those issues with the target parent in their own reunification family counseling. So you ask that all professional therapists involved in the case coordinate with the reunification therapist, or that the reunification therapist has to approve the choice of the individual therapist if the child is going to have a therapist. And I had that happen with one of the judges I worked for. He insisted the child have an individual therapist, but he did allow me to be the person who actually talked to this therapist and see if they were appropriate for the case. So reunification therapist will guide the treatment team and the treatment plan for the child during the whole process. And they help the individual therapist understand that the child is almost never going to be totally comfortable to do that first joint session. There's going to be anxiety. They need to help that child with the anxiety. But most importantly, I have to help the individual therapist understand that the goal here is for the child to reunite with the parent. So let's take a minute to recap what we covered. There are 3 very important steps for a successful reunification therapy process. You got to get a good lawyer, you got to get a good court order, and you've got to get a good reunification therapist. But we haven't done the last one yet. So in the next segment, we're going to go through probably the most important step in having a successful reunification therapy process. In the last segment, we've talked about the first 2 important steps towards a successful reunification therapy process. But now we need to cover the most important step, which is finding a good reunification therapist. I can't stress enough how important this step is. So we're going to spend the whole segment talking about just that issue. And I'm going to warn you, this step requires some homework and your willingness to investigate and interview professionals in your area. But I promise you, if you do this, it is worth it. So what qualifications are needed in a good reunification therapist? Well, there are no certifications or training programs for learning reunification therapy yet. However, there are many highly qualified professionals who are leading the way in education and training for reunification therapists. And you have to ask a lot of questions to see if a therapist is really truly qualified for having studied with some of these professionals. When interviewing potential reunification therapists, there are 6 important questions that they must answer to be qualified as a reunification therapist. So the first question to ask is, do they practice family therapy in their practice, not just individual therapy? Particularly, do they know about structural family therapy? Because as we talked about in an earlier segment, structural family therapy identifies the family as the client, not the child. Many therapists that take on reunification cases have never received any specific training in family therapy, and they're more comfortable with individual therapy. These therapists feel that reunification therapy is just a bunch of individual therapy sessions, which is absolutely the wrong approach. And this wrong approach often has the target parent never having sessions with the child, which is easily the most important thing you want to do in reunification therapy. For example, this is how I trained for family therapy. I trained in family therapy while receiving my master's in social work at Simmons College in Boston. I then worked at 2 Harvard teaching hospitals, one being McLean Psychiatric Hospital, where I saw families all the time. And I did my postgraduate training at Cambridge Family Institute in Boston. The second important question that you should ask: do they work with high conflict families in their practice? High conflict cases require an experienced therapist that can work with personality disorders such as narcissistic, borderline, dependent, even in some cases sociopathic. These clients can be very manipulative and very challenging to work with. A therapist used to managing high conflict cases is more knowledgeable about resisting clients' efforts to split the professionals on a case. They understand and they listen to all perspectives before establishing a treatment plan. You may ask, have they worked as a GAL, a guardian ad litem? Have they trained as a parent facilitator or coordinator for divorced couples? Or maybe they've trained in mediation. Do they have knowledge of the family law court system in their state? Are they afraid to work with or talk to lawyers, which they will absolutely have to do? Are they comfortable collaborating with a lot of professionals on a case? Have they ever had to testify? In my case, I have worked as a guardian ad litem for a number of years in the various counties around Austin. I've trained and become an approved parent facilitator and coordinator in the state of Texas, which, by the way, involves many hours of training in mediation, parenting after divorce, and the recognition of alienation. And I've testified on many cases and sat in numerous court hearings observing and learning about high conflict cases, which particularly helps me when I'm working with my families. The third important question you want to ask is, what is your training in alienation and estrangement? Are they familiar with what we call the 5-factor model developed by William Burnett? Are they familiar with the 17 strategies used by an alienating parent? Are they familiar with the 8 manifestations we often see in children who are being alienated? What books have they read on the subject? What kinds of trainings have they attended? Are they a member of the Parental Alienation Study Group? So let me tell you a little bit about my qualifications. I attended numerous workshops and trainings with some of the leading therapists and researchers in the field of alienation today, such as Amy Baker, William Burnett, the lawyer Demosthenes Larondos, Bill Eddy, Linda Gottlieb, Dr. Steve Miller, and many members of Parental Alienation Study Group. If they know reunification therapy, they will know most of the people on this list. fourth important question that you want to ask is, do they have training in teaching parenting skills? Or what parenting programs do they endorse? Reunification therapists need to evaluate the different style of parenting of each of the parents that they are working with. They have to coach parents on how these parenting differences can be affecting the reunification therapy process and causing parent-child contact problems. For example, the most common pairing that I see that causes the most difficulty is the authoritarian parenting style versus the permissive parenting style. In the authoritarian parenting home, the parent is too rigid, has too many rules, and the child feels too constrained. So they oftentimes want to be with the permissive parent in their home, where they feel like there's not a lot of rules and there's not a lot of things they need to be following. So psychoeducation around changing parenting practices is absolutely essential. You've got to educate both of these parents about how their particular styles are affecting the whole situation and begin to talk to them about more practical ways to parent in these kinds of cases. But I particularly like using the love and logic parenting approach in my practice, which I have actually taught for over 20 years. And I also like the program by Dan Siegel called the Whole Brain Child Approach to Parenting, which actually incorporates principles of neuroscience to teach parents the importance of developing brain-friendly parenting strategies. Both of these approaches teach parents with compassion and empathy and how to limit conflicts between the parent and the child. The fifth important question that you want to ask a reunification therapist is, do they have training in treating the issues of trauma and anxiety? And do they teach these skills to the children if needed? Children in high conflict situations can show a lot of signs of trauma, and a therapist needs to be able to evaluate the level of distress every child is experiencing as you begin the process of reunification therapy. If a child has experienced serious trauma issues, then oftentimes reunification therapy is going to need to progress at a little bit slower pace. The therapist needs to sometimes teach the child strategies for handling the emotional turmoil being experienced during the reunification therapy process. So you ask, well, do they have training in strategies such as EMDR? My training is actually around EMDR, which teaches a lot about how to create a safe emotional inner space for children and how to learn how to contain certain kind of emotions and feelings. And I've done many trainings on strategies for working with children with anxiety issues. We do a lot around breathing strategies or the 5 senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? These kinds of things all contribute to helping children have a little bit more of a relaxed transition into doing reunification therapy. The sixth important question you want to ask a reunification therapist is, how do they structure their treatment process? Now, here's one of the big pitfalls, I think, in situations like this. A therapist wants to meet jointly with the target parent and a child before they've ever done any kind of individual assessments with people in the family. A good reunification therapist should meet with all parents and children individually to get all the perspectives on a case before ever putting anybody in a room together. Never put a child and a parent in a joint session without an adequate preparation and coaching. I spend a lot of time coaching my target parents before we ever do a joint session with a child. So I personally like to meet with each parent individually to get background and history. Then I meet with each child to begin building a positive relationship and hearing whatever their concerns or fears are. It is extremely important for the child to feel safe and comfortable, as I talked about before, and to feel relaxed when they come into my office. So I do a lot of things to help with that process. I have a lot of games, I have snacks, candy, I even have dogs. We have stuffed animals, toys, art supplies, and even sand play. So once I have hopefully established a little bit more of a relaxed atmosphere for the child, I then want to go to the next step, which is reviewing all the documents, videos, recordings, emails, all those things that the parents bring to me to help me understand what's happening in this family situation. Then I like to talk to all the professionals involved in the case. Sometimes there are multiple therapists, guardian ad litems, people like that who I'm going to need to refer to in this case. And finally, I evaluate for alienation versus realistic estrangement. There are times when parents are purposely trying to prevent a child from having a relationship with another parent. But there are also times when a child has realistic reasons for not wanting to be with a parent. So I like to use the 5-factor model to sort of discern these, and this is done by Dr. William Burnett, to see if these cases meet the criteria for alienation or realistic estrangement. I also like to evaluate these cases with the 17 strategies that are used by alienating parents. And I look for the 8 manifestations of children being alienated when I am doing my interviews with children. That was a lot, so let's recap a bit. In this segment, we covered the 6 questions that you must ask a reunification therapist before you get them on your case. Do they practice family therapy in their practice, not just individual therapy? Do they work with high conflict families in their practices? What is their training in alienation and estrangement? Do they have training in teaching parenting skills? Or what parenting programs do they endorse in their practice? Do they have training in treating issues of trauma and anxiety? Do they actually teach these skills to the child if needed? How do they structure their treatment process? In the next segment, we're going to discuss what can go wrong during reunification therapy. Sometimes regular reunification just doesn't work. Maybe you picked the wrong lawyer or got a bad reunification therapist, or maybe your ex is blocking the reunification at every point. So what do you do now? So Tom and Emma ran into this in their situation. So they needed a different type of reunification therapy process called intensive reunification. And in this segment, we're going to go back to the story of Tom and Emma and explore what to do when regular reunification doesn't work. Tom and his 10-year-old daughter were assigned a reunification therapist by the court. They all started to meet with a therapist, but Emma would not meet with the therapist individually. The reunification therapist allowed Mom to keep coming into the therapy sessions with Emma. Now, Tom met individually with the reunification therapist, but he never got to have a joint session with Emma. So the regular reunification process was not progressing in helping Tom reunite with Emma. And Mom refused to assist Tom in getting back his parenting time with Emma in any way. After months of getting nowhere in regular reunification therapy, Tom and his lawyer decided to go back to court. This time they had a new strategy, and it seemed that this was not a mild or moderate case of parent-child contact problems. It was actually a severe case of alienation. So let's talk about what else went wrong in this case and why. Many therapists make mistakes in reunification therapy because they don't really understand the dynamics of resist-refuse, parent-child contact problems, or even the manifestations of alienation in children. There is an important process a therapist needs to follow in reunification therapy. And as we discussed in an earlier segment, all parties need to meet with the therapist individually so the therapist can accurately assess the case. Tom's therapist didn't understand how important this was. She allowed the mother to continue staying in the sessions, which caused further harm to Emma. Red flag. If the child won't meet with a therapist alone, this is a sign of significant psychological enmeshment. Children become highly distressed when they're separated from the favored parent. The enmeshed child actually begins to take on the attitudes, narratives, and even the exact language of the favored parent. They are so enmeshed. The child exhibits what we call anxious attachment when they become separated from the favored parent, and they aren't capable of healthy individuation. A child becomes dependent on the favored parent in many ways. Emma was so enmeshed with mom, she actually used mom to regulate her emotions, and she became highly distressed without her. This would happen every time Tom went to get his daughter for his parenting time. Emma exhibited this extreme emotional dysregulation, and it's not uncommon for severely alienated children to have trouble leaving the favored parent. This should have been a big red flag to the reunification therapist. Another error made in reunification therapy is that the reunification therapist does see everybody individually, but never has the target parent and the child get in a room together to do a joint session. I have so many clients that come to me and I'll ask them, did you ever get in a room to talk anything to your child about anything? And they'll tell me, no, they never did. A good reunification therapist will help a child to prepare for the first joint meeting by helping them with strategies for managing the anxiety around meeting the target parent. But a good reunification therapist knows that it is rare that a child will ever say they're ready to do the joint session. That is why the reunification therapist needs to continually be proactive in leading the reunification process and making this first session happen. A third error often made in reunification therapy is that the therapist allows the regular reunification therapy to go on for too long, and they don't let lawyers and parents know that the case isn't progressing. By 3 to 6 months, most reunification therapy cases should be well on their way to reuniting. If not, this should be another big red flag. This means that the regular reunification therapy process won't be effective, and a more intensive treatment program is probably going to be needed at this point. In this case, a 4-day intensive program was ordered with a 45-day no contact from the favored parent. So what is intensive reunification therapy? Well, intensive reunification therapy is where the target parent and the child are together for 4 days in continuous treatment with a specially trained reunification therapist. The target parent and the child spend time working on exploring their relationship and creating positive experiences with each other again. One of the most important features is for them to have fun together, building those positive experiences. It's important that the 4 days are spent away from the target parent's home, and the family stays together in a hotel or rental property near the treatment office. Often, the treatment includes other family members, like adult siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles. And in the afternoon, everybody goes out to engage in fun family activities. But for intensive treatment to work, a child must be free of the influence of the favored parent. So there must be a court order to do intensive reunification therapy, and the order must specify a period of no contact for at least 45 days between the child and the favored parent. Often there's a lot of concern about the child not having contact with the favored parent for an extended period of time. However, There is no other way for this child to be free from the loyalty bind they have in between these two parents and build back the bond with the target parent, so the no contact becomes necessary. So I want to talk about a big myth, that intensive family therapy is done at a camp. This is just really an urban myth that's been propagated by social media, and many of them do not really know the facts or understand the research on reunification. There is some very good research done by expert psychologists and researchers such as Richard Warshak and Jennifer Harman, demonstrating that there are very good clinical outcomes for these programs. So what happened to Tom and Emma? They realized they needed a different type of reunification therapy used for treating severe cases of alienation. So they requested that the court order a 4-day intensive reunification process with a no contact order of 45 days. Now, the judge granted this request as there did not seem to be any other option for treating the situation. And Tom and his daughter attended this program together, and they are finally able to heal their relationship and reunite. So, does reunification therapy work? Well, in my experience with numerous cases over the years, it definitely does. One of the biggest problems we have right now in the field of treatment is that we do not have many therapists who can actually do reunification therapy. And some of those that say they are doing it are not well trained. And this causes a lot of mistakes to be made on these cases. And then some professionals in the field and the court system say it doesn't work. But the vast majority of my cases reunite despite difficult odds. I've seen clients who were actually accused of sexual and physical abuse reunite with their children and even get treatment ordered for severe alienation. I have seen parents that have not seen their children in years be able to reconnect. So, good reunification therapy has to be a combination of specific therapeutic and psychoeducational practices. It needs to be done by someone who is knowledgeable, even if you have to pay more out of your insurance network for someone that knows what they're doing. And it requires an interdisciplinary approach between lawyers, therapists, and the court. Thank you so much for joining me. Feel free to contact me at contact@lisarothfus.com and check out my other YouTube videos, including what alienated children won't tell you, and my videos on reunification and alienated parent issues.
On next week's episode of Families Divided TV, Marie Morin speaks to us on understanding estrangement, the great divide between parents and adult children.